Welcome to the Dave Palma Show, the podcast that revives, restores, and awakens your innermost capabilities.
You have the training and the talent to succeed, but do you have the guts to fail? I love what I do. When you love what you do, you want to be the best at it.
Today is about the power of you. You will change the world.
Find your path to success through the journey of those who have succeeded. And now, your host, Dave Palma.
Hi, welcome back to the Dave Palma Show. And with me in this episode, I have founder and CEO of London-based DiverseCity think tank, a workplace bias and diversity and inclusion consultancy. He's also one of the world's foremost bias navigation experts. Mosaku has cracked the code for calling out unconscious workplace bias and stopping it in his tracks, which he details in his new book, I Don't Understand Navigating Unconscious Bias in the Workplace. Buki Mosaku, welcome to the Dave Palma Show.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure for having a fellow. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm a retired London firefighter. I was born and bred in London as well, literally. So yeah. So your work is based in London as well. Although this is a global issue, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Very much so. You know, it's a big problem globally.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you've got a book now called I Don't Understand Navigating Unconscious Bias in the Workplace. That would be a very popular question, really, for a lot of people. I don't understand it. Could you help people understand it? What is it?
Yeah. Well, look, essentially, what I address is career stifling behavior conditioned by negative societal conditioning towards minorities and marginalized groups, but also from marginalized and minority groups towards the majority, which creates this kind of dynamic which leads to underrepresentation of minorities in senior roles and unequal opportunity for minorities in the workplace.
Yeah, but I mean, I know with my work that I've done through the trade union, as well as even trade unions have their issues as well, actually. But just as a firefighter, and then suddenly feeling it and knowing it, and talking to other black firefighters and obviously other minority groups and female firefighters when they joined, they were even more of a minority. But the fact is, the word, obviously after the Stephen Lawrence review and everything, the word institutionally racism came out, which actually reflected the lack of number of, ethnic minorities and black firefighters and police officers, etc., employed and in other areas as well, not just only in the front line. So it wasn't called unconscious bias then, I mean, is it another term for the same thing, or?
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point, and I think it's really important to differentiate between workplace bias, racial bias, for example, or gender bias in the work, but misogyny. To differentiate between, for example, racial bias in the workplace and racism outside of the workplace, or racism in the workplace. Racism is conscious bias. It's conscious. I don't like people of this ethnicity or from this background. Racial bias is a unconscious, conditioned decisions and behavior towards people from a particular group, and so there is a difference. In the same way, misogyny is, kind of, I can't stand women, for example, for whatever reason, right? Whereas gender bias towards women is unconscious thinking patterns driven by negative societal conditioning towards people from that group.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a difference. And it's a really good point, because one of the biggest challenges, and I'm probably speaking forward here, but one of the biggest challenges in addressing workplace bias is people use the same solutions that they would use for wider social injustice. They use that to address unconscious bias in the workplace.
Yeah.
And those solutions tend to begin and end with authority and leadership. Whereas with regards to workplace bias, there is more scope for the individual, the traditional victim and non-traditional victim to actually navigate it on their own, or collaboratively, rather.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, that's very interesting. Also, as I said, I only really mainly first heard about institutional racism when we was got together as a group of black firefighters around 1995. I mean, I felt the discrimination. I mean, and then I was talking to others, and obviously the kind of things cultural things that you feel in these types of, or any workplace that you do your work in, and then obviously the term institutional racism comes. But lately it's been systemic racism, and just before that it was unconscious bias. And I just always wanted to make sure people can determine between the two, because unconscious means something you're not really thinking about, but you just kind of do it, like, I'm going to give this job to, because that's the way it is, or something like that, why there's so many female nurses, or something like that, so that is that an unconscious thing, to do?
That's unconscious. And so that's where, you think, oh yeah, the nurse is a female's job, so I'm gonna give more of the roles to people who are female. That is unconscious. The world has taught you that. It's not necessarily the case. And the same, in the same way, I have an affinity to somebody who comes from East London, who's white, and you're black, and you're not from East London. So I'm not necessarily going to give you the same rub of the green that I would give to somebody who's from my manor, so to speak, and who looks like me. It's unconscious, but that's what happens. It's interesting, but it's also interesting what you said about the toxic environment that you kind of were in. I think, not to complicate it, but when you have like unconscious bias unaddressed, because it comes in different forms, it can lead to the kind of toxicity that we're seeing in some of our cherished institutions, like the fire brigade and police. So microaggressions, for example, could be unconscious. Calling somebody a certain type of name, or dealing with women in a certain way. It could be an unconscious thing that you've learned, right? And that is unconscious, and it is a microaggression. It could be a comment about where somebody's from, or about their person or their religion, or whatever. But unchecked, that leads to the kind of toxicity that we're seeing in a lot of institutions now, which is really a shame.
Yeah, and in the police, a lot of crime, because obviously they've committed a lot of crime towards women as well, especially, and racism.
Of course.
Obviously in America, killing black people a lot, and over here, towards women with the killing and other stuff. Well, both, and that's all. It's all down to the kind of, like you say, unconscious way of how you see and perceive and speak amongst groups that are the majority and things like that, really, which obviously I know about because I've been around myself.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to find a way of calling it out. If we don't call out that kind of, if we don't nip it in the bud when it's unconscious, when it's possible to, then it grows. We've seen recently in McDonald's. I don't know if you've seen on the news.
I have,
horrific stuff happening at McDonald's. This is like a global culture.
Oh, it was, I remember as a 16-year-old, I think I got a job 3 weeks in there, and I probably wondered why I wasn't ever at the till. And I think I know why now. I want to be in the front serving. I don't want to be cooking hamburgers all the time, flipping it. I'm joining the fire brigade instead.
Those are two fires for you to put out. It's like, I feel you. And it's this toxic. I wrote an article recently in the European. It's coming out shortly, I think in August, right? And I talked about this whole toxicity, and when I was thinking about the fire brigade as it happens, and the Met, you know, and I think we have to find a way to collaboratively call it out, and that's what my book's all about: how to call out bias, right, in the moment, as and when it happens, without getting the other person's back up and without getting your own back up,
Well,
so that you can
that's the
nip it in the bud.
skill. Well, that's the skill, you see, and unfortunately, that hasn't been going on. Because how do you do that? Because people's backs do get up, including right up to the hierarchical of even a fire
Yeah,
chief, when you've only really made a complaint about the line manager, for instance, for you know
yeah,
saying the N word when he's out in a black community somewhere serving the community. He's supposed to really be not
yeah,
discriminatory against. Do you see what I mean?
yeah,
Do you see what I'm talking
yeah.
about?
How not to
And then
win friends
hang on
and
a minute.
influence people.
My line manager, the sub officer or the cap, we could say watch manager there, he just said the N word, and what's going on? And then everyone's going to complain, and then the chief gets to hear about it, and it's like, right, what's this troublemaker Dave Palmer doing? Blah blah blah. Let's make life difficult. Let's take away his promotion
Yeah,
chances and whatever. Let's
yeah,
let's
yeah,
throw a few kind of like rumor mongered false whispering things. Politics happens after
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's politics because they talk to politicians. You know,
yeah. And that's how,
and
yeah, it's so
and they're
interesting
all
what you're
mates,
saying.
and they're all mates.
Yeah.
They're all mates. Uh, and
But yeah, it's
talking about the word mate, because you're talking about actually um, calling it out and nipping it in the bud.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think of the mayor's new? Because some campaigners say that's not enough. But what do you think of the mayor's new campaign with misogyny? This is obviously, but
Yeah.
he hasn't really spoken about the black community yet, or
Mm,
black and minority community, I should say.
mm.
Calling out, saying mate if you're watching football, and saying that blah 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 with black
Yeah,
blah blah whatever,
yeah,
because that does go on in the fire brigade. It's
yeah,
more like a builder's mentality thing where you're wolf whistling and things like that. Really, and they do it in
yeah,
public as well. But the thing is,
yeah.
I mean,
We
what
have to
you
be careful with our bias towards builders, though. Let's be careful.
oh,
But I
sorry
get
about
what
that.
you
Yeah,
mean.
yeah. Because I'm a female now, I know everything. But you know what I'm talking about, yeah. Because,
Yeah, yeah,
so what I'm saying is that enough to call it out to say mates? Because I've seen some of the posters in the
yeah,
news up on
yeah,
Piccadilly Circus and different places.
yeah, yeah.
Is that enough to say that?
No, no. What I think we need to do. There's two levels of it, right? There's what I call close quarter microaggression type bias, close quarter bias, or that kind of micro. And then there's when you're in a group and a crowd. And I think in the close quarters, it's really important that we teach people how to call it out then and there. That's really important. So if I sense bias, if I'm on the receiving end of some kind of microaggression, that is some kind of racial slight or misogynistic comment, towards me as a woman, or because of my, minority gender identity or whatever, right, or my disability, I need to know how to call you out in that moment, not go to a safe space, not go and report you. I need to be able to do it one-on-one. And to date, nobody really shows people how to do that. They don't equip them
They
with
don't
the
show them
skills to
there.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and if you, yeah, go on.
yeah, my understanding is that the way the mayor Sadiq Khan is saying it is, look, you're sitting there watching TV. Why don't you just call your mates out and say, mate, look, listen, like that. But is
Okay,
that
I mean, yeah. So what you said? What's your question?
no, no,
You're
no? I'm
saying
saying is
enough?
that enough? Yeah, I mean, some people do that,
Yeah,
don't they?
yeah, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
no, of course. If some, go on.
yeah, I mean, in the workplace, I couldn't really do it so much because I know I would have got slaughtered. I would have been out the job. Probably I wouldn't have had a
Yeah,
career in the fire service if I did it so much. But I just made sure I didn't really get involved with when they were watching porn and just saying so many discriminatory things about women and even black people. Obviously, I wouldn't do that anyway. But
yeah,
it's just not on to get involved. But when you go too far into say because I didn't have the skills, what you're talking about, to
yeah. Yeah, look, I think, look, you know what? If you're around a group of people and they say something wrong, then I do think the mayor's got a point. You should kind of just say, "Hey, that's out of order,"
yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
in terms of, I know it can be very difficult, especially in a situation where you're in an environment which is inherently toxic. That's the culture. You're in there.
Mm.
You have to kind of blend, but you also have to live with stuff that you don't want to live with. And so the term "I don't understand" is actually a tool for doing that.
Right.
because
Yeah.
if you think about it, when you say I don't understand to someone, right? What it's the purest and it's the most unscathed place you can come from, right? We call it dispassionate developmental inquiry. So when I'm in a conversation and a person, for example, if I'll take it from two perspectives. If let's say I haven't been given a career opportunity, which I think I should be, right? I could say, well, it's not fair. I've got this criteria, I've got this qualification, I've got that qualification, I've got the other qualification. Why haven't I got the job? But that's just going to get their back up. And in many cases, they're going to think, well, are you saying that I'm this type of person that would discriminate against, and all of this kind of thing? So you get into a place where you don't want to get into. But I think a very powerful way of calling it out is just to say, I don't understand. And what we found is when you turn it, I don't understand, into a question, it ignites the other, or invokes the other person to give direction. So what they'll say is one of two things. They'll either say, well, what don't you understand? And now you're in a conversation which you wouldn't have been able to get into otherwise. Or they're going to say to you, well, let me explain. And again, you're in a conversation that you wouldn't have got into otherwise. Now, the key, once you get into that conversation, is to stick with that I don't understand type of query. That is, stick with the dispassionate developmental inquiry. So if you say, look, just for my own development, can you tell me what the criteria was for the shortlist for this role? So the person's got to answer.
Yeah.
Right? That's an I don't understand type of question. So you're going to say, well, the criteria was this, that, and the other. Then you can say, all right, I see, but I kind of tick those boxes. So could you explain to me where I didn't fit in as far as that criteria was concerned? And the person will keep having to explain. And if it doesn't make sense, say that and keep saying that until the bias calls itself out. But you shouldn't say, what you can't do is say, you chose her instead of me because of X, Y, and Z. Because now you become the perpetrator.
Yeah,
and they become the victim because you don't know.
That has
100%.
happened. Yeah, that has happened, and some white entrants, people applying, applicants, for the say firefighters, are saying, well, I'm going to sue the brigade because you chose a female on top of me because you did this route or that route and things like that, not knowing where it was coming from, so.
So that, like that. So for example, you can't, we can't, whoever the traditional victim is, can't fight bias with bias, right? You have to come from a place of inquiry, developmental inquiry. But if for microaggressions, which is the other stuff that you were talking about, where people make like slight comments unconsciously, or they're just part of the culture, so they just do it. Again, that we can call out. But we can't be accusative. Right? So when we call that out, we need to sort of like if somebody says, "Oh, you speak so well," somebody used to say, people used to say to me, "You speak so well," and I used to think you're saying that because I'm black and you don't expect me to speak well. That was my internal dialogue, right? Right. But
go on. No, I've interrupted you. I should let you carry on first.
So that was my internal dialogue. Now, maybe that was true and maybe it wasn't, but I don't know for sure. So it would be wrong of me to have that internal dialogue. So what I'd rather say to that person is just give them the benefit of the doubt. So I'd say, "Oh, thanks. You speak so well too." Right? Or don't sound so surprised. And then move on and enjoy your lunch. Now, when you say don't sound so surprised, right? The person's it's gonna give the person something to think about. Now, which is good because you want to interrupt their bias. Or what's going to happen is going to say, "Well, actually, look, no, I wasn't saying that kind of thing." And then they'll want to try and get into a conversation with you. Now, you can decide to get into that conversation or you don't. But the key thing here is that you now have the power. And I think it's the same thing with racial slurs, misogynistic slurs. You do the same thing. Person makes a comment. I'm trying to think of a misogynistic comment. Right, but I can't at the moment. Right?
Maybe you're not allowed to say it on air.
Maybe I'm not allowed to say it,
even though it's not live, and I can edit it out. No, I'm joking. I mean, because obviously, I'm a guy. I was around lots of men that done it, and like I said, I didn't want to join in, but it's a culture, and some people don't realise they're doing it to fit in. And what fit in for what?
Yeah,
it's like, what's that going to? Who's that going to benefit? What's it going to do?
Exactly, and that's why. But I think it's really important that people intelligently but calmly, when they sense it, or or if they hear it, they must say something.
Yeah,
The key
the
is
key.
teaching them what to say, right?
That's the
Because
key. Yeah.
something I can say on air, right? Some women I've
No, you
heard
can say
women
what you
get,
want. I don't know. You can say what you
yeah,
want.
no, but I know,
If it's
but I
that
just,
bad,
but
he asked me
even,
to cut it out.
yeah, but no, but even like, I'll just give a really one which kind of is an intersectional one, right?
Yeah.
Where sometimes I speak to well, not just, I was going to say black women, but all different women, right? White and black, and everything in between, and they've said to me, yeah, the person will say, "Can I touch your hair?"
Oh
Right
yeah.
now, yeah, I mean, like,
I used
so
to get that
what,
when I used to get that when I shaved my. I mean, I mostly had shaven hair. I've only just recently
yeah,
grown my hair and bred beard. And when I
yeah.
shaved it, I used to get people say, "Oh, well, touch it and smooth it," and it's
Yeah,
like,
it's like, it's like, so what I encourage people to say if somebody says that, for example, because that's like, it's not a sort of overt kind of offensive thing, but
no,
it
no,
can be, you might perceive it, a person might perceive it as offensive. So what they
yeah,
could say there, for example, is, yeah, only if I can rummage my hand through your hair first, and then the person's going to think, oh, what was that all about, right?
yeah,
And then they'll probably leave it alone, right? Or
yeah,
they might go, oh no, you got the wrong input. I just think it, and then
no,
then you start to get into a conversation, and then you can explain, and this is the kind of stuff I talk about in my book. But the key is
oh, okay,
we have to empower the disempowered,
yes,
because
yeah,
if you wait for other people if you wait for other people to sort of be empathetic and sensitive to your
yeah.
challenges, you're going to be waiting forever. When did you leave the fire brigade, Dave?
2014, about almost after 25 years service. Yeah, that's
Right, so
almost
20.
9
Yeah.
years
Well,
ago.
first
Yeah,
of all, in brackets, you're amazing, right? But apart from that, right?
that's still going on now, and I'm
Yeah, that's
surprised.
still going on.
I'm
Exactly.
very
So
surprised
obviously, it's
about
not
that.
working the way that.
No,
Yeah. So
it's not.
yeah, obviously these kind of, or will, if we sit down and wait for change and don't have any input, don't have any actual active input in that change, we're going to be waiting for another 25 years. And the statistics, if you look at the statistics, they show that. So we need to now have a more collaborative approach, where if I unconsciously do the wrong thing, you can call me out. And if you unconsciously say the wrong thing, I can call you out. And then hopefully this will kind of dissipate the problem fast.
Yeah. No, that's it exactly. I want to just move on to another challenge because, as you know, some firefighters do a second job. These days, you've got to do a second or even third job for some people in lower paid jobs.
Really?
Like,
Oh, I didn't know.
yeah, a lot of firefighters did, and the days I did, there's a culture of that. But now you'd have to do a second job in nearly any job that's not paying the bills. Do you see what I mean?
Yes.
The cost of living
Yeah.
crisis,
Side hustle. Right?
side hustle, basically. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was working as a fire steward at Fulham Football Club once. So it was kind of like a little perk to watch the games and things like that. But that was when they were in
Yeah.
Division 1 for such a long time. And then they finally got into to the Premier League in about, I think it was 2001 or 2002. I can't remember. And I worked in between the two. So I was there when they were in the Championship thing. I don't even know.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Of course.
yeah. They were in that, trying to get through. The first time when I think who was in charge, not Kevin King, that French manager, I can't remember his name now. Anyway,
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Alain something.
Yeah, that's right. This is about 2000, 2001, before 2002, anyway. And then, so I did the reverse of the normal stewards, where we checked the safety during the time when the crowd is not in the stadium, meaning at break times when they get their beer and things like at half time. Just as they're coming into there, I'm checking everything. And then during the match, we can just pretty much go anywhere. And I was watching the match really, whereas the actual stewards had to have their back turned to the crowd for crowd safety. I was doing fire safety, you see.
Right.
Well, I stood in the one part, and then I heard there was two black players there. I think one was a French player. I can't remember his name now. Sahu, I think it was. Or
Saha?
Saha, that's it.
Louis Saha.
Yeah,
Legend.
and then there's another.
My new guys. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So this is. I think he played for France as well, didn't he? And then there was another
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And then there's another one who's British-born player. And then
Mm.
one of the spectators said, "You black bee, blah blah blah, you rubbish or whatever, useless, whatever." And then
Wow.
he said, "Not you, Saha, the other one," like that. And then I've heard all
You're
kinds
an
of.
all right
I've
black
heard.
bee.
Yeah. And I said, "Did you hear that?" To the normal steward, I said, "Did you hear that?" I just heard a racial comment because we're supposed to call it out. That's what it said. If you hear a racial, part of the rules was if you hear it, we were reading the steward's thing, and I was in the crowd, and they said, come here further in the crowd and tell me what you saw and heard right in front of this person. And that's pretty dangerous because when he hears it, it's going to become some kind of ruction going on in the crowd. Who's going to control that? And I thought, you idiot, you're supposed to take me outside away from the crowd. To get that sorted out. But of course, I was calling it out and doing what the book rules were saying. Do you see what I mean? To say if you hear anything, report it, and then, of course, try and get that person to say, "Excuse me, sir, can you just come outside a minute?" It's not my job to do it because I do fire safety. It's his job as a steward to do it, or call a police officer to do it, or sort of one of the senior people. And that didn't happen.
Is where, I was just going to say, this is where what at the top of the show you talked about institutional isms, and in this case we're talking about racism, right? That's what not teaching people how to deal with this and making it a kind of making it a serious thing that they have a procedural thing is institutional racism. That's that's Pontius Pilate.
Right.
That's turning a blind eye. That's actually throwing wood into the fire. And it's the same reason why referees, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, need to be held more accountable for dealing with these types of things when they see it. They should just walk. They should walk off. They should, give the team.
They should allow that. Yeah, they should do that. Yeah,
just give the match to the other team.
Yeah,
that's it. Don't.
I mean,
no talk. Everybody has an early shower.
They can stop matches for other things. Why not that? It's just as serious, I mean, I'm not disrespecting the fact that when the Danish runner, what's his name, Christian, whatever his name is, when he had a heart attack on the pitch, and then that was stopped, wasn't it?
Oh God,
but they carried it on anyway. But the fact is, you've got to do something like that. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
irrespective.
Because your silence is tacit agreement. Of what's happening unless you do. Yeah. I mean, go on.
I was going to say, in my case, it could have been a serious ruction inside the crowd.
Yeah, that could have been. Yeah,
then they would have had to stop it, wouldn't they?
I hope you were bigger than him.
No, I wasn't. I don't think I was. I don't think I was. It was a lot older than me at the time because that was quite a while back. It was like 21 years ago, wasn't it? So,
you were 5.
Well, look, that actually is in the workplace because that was directed from a member of public at someone who's doing their job on a pitch. They're employed, they're employee for Fulham Football Club. And I could have got in trouble as an employee for Fulham Football Club. I was actually directly employed by Fulham Football Club as well. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is a workplace situation.
That's a workplace scenario.
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah, and the slur is an unconscious thing, isn't it?
Of course it is. But the only way,
part.
there's a big I think you just did the right thing. I just think you had the wrong
person to try and report it to. I reported to the wrong. He looked like he didn't look like the sort of person I should have. But he's the only person nearest to me, and I didn't know any better then, So it actually was more dangerous than anything. I was saying anything. I felt more danger then because I've been trained. That's the other thing. They train people for danger in our job, the firefighting, from one on the danger of these things. What you're teaching, that can lead to a dangerous situation as well, can't it?
Definitely it can.
So why not? Why not use your training as part of the conflict resolution that can deal with things like that?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I also actually just wanted to raise one point, which just for balance, but I think, in more traditional kind of work environments, it's very important. In my book, I talk about the multi-directional nature of workplace bias. And what all bias, like the bias that you're talking about, obvious and almost conscious, and that's kind of, you could argue that's conscious racism, right? No, but some of it is unconscious as well. Some people are just used to doing it, right?
Yeah, but there's racism in football anyway. So I mean, even for internally with managers, look how many managers are, black players trying to become managers, or even,
of course,
things like that. It's a very serious problem. That's unconscious. That's unconscious.
Yeah, it is unconscious. But you know what the other thing is? One thing which I think is important to let listeners know is that also, so yeah, you're right. I agree with everything you said. But also sometimes in a traditional workplace, we have to be careful as well, because of all this stuff that's happening, the examples that you've given and we've spoken about, because of all this stuff, we can whatever the minority can be conditioned to expect bias when it's not there. And the problem is all bias, unconscious bias, right? Unconscious bias, most of it, right? Or at least in the workplace, is sensed. So you don't actually know 100, for example, in the example of the job thing, you don't actually know 100% certain that the person didn't give you the job because of X, Y, and Z. You just don't know 100%. So when you assume that that's the reason, that it's a racial bias thing, or it's it's a sexism thing, or it's a minority sexual orientation thing, when you assume that without knowing, you become the perpetrator and the other person becomes a victim.
So easily.
So what I don't understand it allows, using that statement and turning it into a question, it allows for the potential of misinterpretation, but still cause the bias out anyway. Right. So it gives the benefit of the doubt, but cause it out anyway.
Yes, yeah.
And I think it's very important that we are aware of that sometimes we can sense bias, and it could be, if it's not there, that's our bias. Sometimes it's our bias. It's not necessarily the other person.
No, because it's in everyone anyway, isn't it? Really. I mean, I can't say whether I've been unconscious bias to other groups, than the one I'm not a member of. So that's, I'm neurodiverse. I have dyslexia. Nobody knows that until they stop calling me stupid because I told them that. Look, listen, I just need help with blah blah blah, or some reasonable adjustments here. Things like that. Things like
right.
that.
Yeah.
That's a slightly different.
That's a good example.
Yeah,
no, but it's a good example. That's a great example. But then the other side of it is that you could become paranoid. You could be paranoid, thinking that they're thinking that you're.
I've been down that road.
And they could just be miserable.
Yeah. Well, before we run out of time, anyway, because we've only got like 1 2 minutes left, I just wanted to tell people more, because we could be here forever talking. Me and you just easily can talk about a lot of stuff, because you're from London as well. I get a lot of food from the States on this podcast, but I'm glad you come on, to talk about something very close to my heart anyway. But just tell everyone, my listeners, for now, where they can find you in your work, and I'm sure I'm going to have you on the show again, almost more times than one anyway. So,
all right, great. Yes. So look, if they go to bukimosaku.com, they'll be able to find me and everything about me and the book and the work. Also, navigatingbias.com. We've got a little assessment tool there, and it kind of is free, and it shows people how they can assess to what extent they're using the right strategies within their organizations to address workplace bias. And so lots of people are using it and getting lots of results, so they can do that as well.
Fantastic. Buki, as I say, we could be here forever talking, and I'm sure we can probably get together and try and do some work together with, my angle of what I do and yourself with your work. And so sure. We just have to definitely stay in touch. But for the meantime, I really, really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for talking to my audience today on the podcast today.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure.
That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and leave a review over on Apple Podcasts. Or head over to my website, davepalmer.com, and click on Rate Show. Well, that's all for now, but I'll see you in the next episode of The Dave Palmer Show.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.